Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello, and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today, I'm excited to be talking to James Fahy about his book, The Changeling Series. Hi, James.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Give us a little bit of background on what is the Changeling Series.
At the moment, it's a series of books that I'm writing. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had to count in my head then. There's 5 books currently in the series. There's at least another 2, possibly 3 to complete the full series. And it's a fantasy series, very traditional sort of high fantasy. It's marketed at MG, middle grade readers, so sort of middle school to young adult. To be honest, though, what I've found is that a lot of my readers are either young adults or complete adults, like yourself. I know you've read some of them too, so that's what it's marketed at, but it's got quite a wide readership base. But it's just a general fantasy story that's epic in scope, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it is. Here are the latest 2 books, which I'm never sure whether I get things in the frame or not. This is book 4 and 5, The Glassfire Serpent. And in each of your books, you have an element that is the extra character in your book. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, each of the books is loosely structured around one of the different elements of magic. In the lore of the universe, the idea is that magic is broken down into various different elements: earth, air, fire, water, light, darkness, and spirit or mana. And I always wanted each of the books to be individual and based around loosely one of those, so it has its own feel and theme, but really it's one story from beginning to end.
I did notice in the Glassfire Serpent, it comes in 2 parts, which was, number 1, not fair to me, because then I had to wait for the second part. We've already, James and I have already discussed this off camera. So, but it was worth a wait. I did notice in the second half of Glassfire Serpent, there is a lot of weaving in of characters we have seen in earlier books. And I really enjoyed that, seeing people pop up, no matter how briefly or for how long, but it was really an interesting thing to see the weaving.
Yeah, it's something that I've always has been important in the series for me, is to introduce characters that they don't just serve like a bookmark purpose of, they serve this role in this book. We want to see them again, and we want to see how they change as well. That's one of my main things with this whole series, is that, if you read book 1, you've got these very, very good, obviously heroic characters and these very clear-cut bad characters who are the evil ones. And then by books 4 and 5, the waters have become muddied slightly, and you see some strange alliances through the series where people who seem very bad and maybe not quite as bad, or can act good, and vice versa. That's always been something I've deliberately done through the series, is to try and make it a little more gray as it goes on, less black and white.
And that's an interesting read too, because as to get into a little bit of meat of what the books are about, Robin, the scion of the Arcania, is coming into himself. And not only him, but everyone else is growing as well. They're developing things about their personality and their spirit that are really interesting to read. We've got Henry, who is what I might call mostly an earthbound human, who actually by book 5 gets some extra things to help propel him along, which are very, very interesting. So
Henry. Sorry, I was going to say Henry has always been a bit of a sleeper character, in that everybody else seems to have these fantastic powers and abilities, and Henry is very much the everyman. He's just the normal boy, kind of along for the ride. And we address this in the books. I think it's in book 3 where Henry becomes quite frustrated that he's just the mascot for the team, and there's a bit of a falling out and a reconciliation. But like you say, by the end of books 4 and 5, he's coming into his own a bit, and it's clear he's going to have a much bigger role to play, and there's going to be more to him than meets the eye, hopefully.
And he is the unflinching character who is so supportive of his friends and his loved ones. And that is a really nice thing, because I do think that as sort of the human in the story, it would be very easy for him to really be left behind. But he is so fiercely loyal to his friends. And that's something that's really fun to watch and see throughout all of the books.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you think that as well. He's a very good character to write. For me, he kind of ties everyone else together. I feel that if Henry wasn't there, everybody would argue a lot more, or maybe go off and do their own things. And he kind of he's like the peacemaker in the company. And the fact that no matter how dramatic things are getting, or because some of them can be a little high strung and a little over dramatic by the nature of their personalities, and then Henry is completely unfazed. Whatever's happening, he's just like muddles through. He's never surprised. He takes it all on the chin, and he kind of anchors everyone and brings them all back down to earth. So that's his role in the group.
And I totally get that. And I like that. He's definitely the ride or die. And he's also, you know, when you're the sort of the underdog when it comes to powers, he's always willing to go. And I think that's a beautiful thing about his character, that he may be the most brave of all, because he's having to sort of go on his own and assume that he'll be okay. And I like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's unarmed. Everybody else is armed with powers and skills and things that, you know, they can hold their own. And Henry, I think we can all, as readers, identify mostly with him, because that would be us if we were in the book. Just like literally going, I have no skills, I have no abilities, but what the hell? Let's go for it anyway.
So is Aunt Irene going to have a larger role at some point? I mean, she's got a great role, but I would like to see her get down and dirty at some point.
I think we've seen a hint of that back in book 3 near the end, and I got quite a lot of feedback from readers at the end of that book, because books 1 and 2, she serves sort of the classic fantasy mentor role. You know, she's there to protect and guide and inform the young heroes. And from a literary point of view, that's an important role, an important tool for me as an author. It's someone who knows everything and can protect and guide these young people. But obviously, as they're getting older through the books, they're getting more independent. They don't need that guidance as much, or they have their own opinions and they don't always agree with what she might have to say, which gives me more room to use her in different ways. And at the end of book 3, again, without giving spoilers away for people who haven't read it, you know that she has a very active part in the finale, and we sort of see a side of her that we haven't seen before, and that there's a lot more to her. You will see a lot more of her in the next book. I'm trying to think how I can say things without spoiling. Yeah, she has a very important role to play in the next book that you will either be very happy with me about or very angry with me about. Who knows?
That's okay, because I think that's... So I am curious, what was the reaction? Were most people more excited about Irene having more of a role, or not excited?
No, it was a very positive reaction. It was like, yes, the gloves are off. You know, we've seen her being controlled and stately and wise, but here we saw her literally let her hair down and what she's capable of. And the fact that she hasn't used any of that power until she absolutely had to, I think, says a lot to the readers about her character. That she, you know, she is much more powerful than you'd imagine, but she doesn't intervene until she absolutely has to.
That was something that I did enjoy. I mean, I knew that she, as you say, serves a purpose, but it was nice to see her step up. And of course, as an educator, you have a role as an educator to educate. But if you step up all the time and take care of everything, then there's really no education. So her role as an educator is very important, but it's also nice to see her get a little bit of her come into her own self.
Yeah, and it's nice to see her give the children of Erlking a little bit more independence as well, because as you say, as educator, you can get in the way of them learning if you're doing everything for them all the time, or you're always there to save the day and pull them out of the fire. How is anyone ever going to learn to look after themselves? So, as you know, at the end of the most recent book, it's set up with, right, you're going off to do this next, and you're going on your own. So, the big change.
Yes, it is. So, how fun is writing Woad?
Oh, he's my absolute favorite character to write. I don't really write him. I have it in my head. I know what the scene's going to be, and I start writing it, and I know that he's going to be in it, and then I plan for him to say X, Y, and Z, and then he just says whatever he wants, and takes me off in directions I wasn't expecting. He says things that I don't know where they come from. I don't know where he comes from, honestly. But he's well loved. I think he's probably the most popular character with readers, and the one that most people are very protective of. I get constant, if anything ever happens to Woad, I will come to your house. Okay. No promises.
Well, as the author, you get to make the choices at the end of the day. So I will say, though, that
I was going to say that the choices, unfortunately, they're already made for the whole series. It's already written in note form, so I already know how it ends. 2 or 3 books from now, I know who wins, who loses, who lives, who dies. And people saying, I hope this happens or I hope this doesn't happen, it won't really affect it because it's already decided. So it's out of my hands.
Yes, but there could be an uprising. Just keep that in mind.
There could.
I followed an author from New Orleans years ago, and I read several. He, I think, had 3 books, and in book 2, he and they were fiction. And in book 2, towards the end, he killed off probably what I assume was the most popular character. Not really a good idea, because he's sort of, I don't know, maybe he just stopped writing, but it actually hurt my feelings, because I'm like, how can you give us someone that we love so much and honestly, it wasn't a spectacular death. It was sort of like okay, she's gone now. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Oh, really? I would feel cheated with that. I was about to say, I think if you're going to kill or end someone who is such a beloved character, my point would be it had better mean something. It had better be for a very good reason that people can say, that was tragic, but look what's happened because of it, or look how important it was. But to just sort of bop someone off, push them off the pier at the end of the,
I'm like, oh strange. All I can think of is career suicide.
Yeah, maybe they were just so tired of writing. They're like, no, I'm going to just make sure everyone knows this character is not coming back because I'm tired.
Well, I
think as a writer, if you're tired of writing, it would be.
And I do think sometimes as a writer, I'm not a writer, but I can imagine that as a writer, there may come a time where you're like, okay, I feel like I have reached the end with this particular character. And then if you keep trying to go forward, you run into the possibility of boring the reader. Because if you don't want to write it.
I think if you're trying to force yourself to write anything that you personally don't feel excited about, if you as a writer, if you're not excited about it, how on earth do you expect readers to be excited about it? I couldn't write anything that I wasn't interested in. When I was very first starting out and I got my agent and we were discussing what I was writing, we did have a brief conversation where just over lunch and they were saying, oh, this genre is really popular right now. Why don't you write something? And it was something like a Western or, a very good genre, but I've got zero interest in it. And I thought, oh, I suppose I could sit down and I could make myself write. And I thought it would be awful because I'm not interested in it. And I wouldn't expect people to go and pay money for something that I've written that I've not got my heart in. You've got to write about what you're passionate about, I think.
I totally agree with you. And I think we've been chums on Instagram and Facebook for a long time. So you already know how much I've enjoyed the series. But I do agree that, we're fortunate and we're blessed that there are millions of books out there. Some books appeal to me and some books don't, and that's okay. But if you write something you're passionate about, you often connect with other people who are passionate about the same things. So that makes it a lot more fun to read.
Exactly, and it's encouraging as a writer as well when you do make that connection with readers. When you write something that you're excited about, and you know, you get the story in your head, you can't wait to get it out, because that's what being a writer is. You want to tell people this story and you want them to enjoy it. And especially in our modern world, there's a lot more interaction between writer and readers. You get to, like yourself and like everyone else on social media, I get to get a lot of feedback from readers, and I get to chat about what they'd like and what they don't like. And that's very rewarding as a writer, to hear that people are enthusiastic about what you're writing and that they've enjoyed reading it as much as you've enjoyed writing it.
So what's coming up next in the Changeling series?
The next book, I'm trying to wonder whether I can give you the title, because it would be an exclusive, because I haven't told anyone yet.
Well, bring it on, James. Come on.
The next book, it will be called The Gloamstone Road.
All right.
And it centers around, as we've said earlier, each book is around one of the different elements. This one is around the element of darkness.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm excited.
You know, going off, you know, what happened in the last book, which was all fire, quite a few dramatic things happened in that book, especially toward the end. Hopefully, there were a few revelations about certain characters and a few cliffhangers we left it on. So this next book is all about what happens with that information, with all the new things Robin's learned about certain characters and taking that forward. And obviously, it's based around darkness, so it is going to be maybe a little bit of a darker book, maybe a more dramatic book, but hopefully still light and fun, and Wode's in it. So,
well, precisely. As long as Wode's in it, we're good to go. And you have a.
I'd be surprised if he doesn't get his own spin-off series at some point. You know,
I approve of that. If I get to approve, I approve. So you have an anniversary edition coming out as well, don't you?
Yes, of the first book, Isle of Winds. There's a special limited collector's edition coming out, and it's being published as an NFT, non-fungible token, which is an online currency. So it's kind of like a Kindle book. It's an electronic version. The difference being, with an NFT, with a Kindle, when you buy a Kindle, you're buying access to a copy that everybody else who buys has that same copy. With an NFT, it's like getting a signed personal edition. Nobody else will have the copy you have. So it's signed, it's numbered. There's only going to be 200 copies made in the world. So once they're gone, and whoever's bought them, good luck to them. But to celebrate it, we're putting a lot of extra things in there. So there's character illustrations, which they've been done by, obviously, the publisher has found professional illustrators and liaised with me for some ideas and guidance. And I've had to kind of take a bit of a less of a control freak, because obviously we all have our own ideas. And I'm like, it doesn't look exactly like I picture it. But then every single reader will have their own slightly differently tweaked versions of what people look like. So it was interesting to see somebody else's version of my characters. So there's illustrations in there. There will be maps in there, which is something that people ask me for a lot with this series. Like, please publish maps. So there will be a map of that journey, so you get to see the Netherworld and where things are, which I'm quite excited about people seeing. There's a lot of background information and sort of bonus material. You know, like when you buy a special edition DVD and it comes with all the bonus features and behind the scenes, there's a lot of that in there. So hopefully for fans of the series who are really into it, it'll give them that little extra bit more. And I've also written for the NFT anniversary edition, there's a sort of 50-60 page bonus story that will only be available in that. And that's actually a prologue to Isle of Winds. And it tells how two of the main characters met. So there's a little bit of extra story in there as well for them. And that's coming out in November.
And how do you get an NFT?
It's through a new company called Book Vaults, which you can look them up online, either through Instagram or Twitter or what have you. So they've just set up the company. And this is the first time it's ever been done with a full book. NFTs have been for artwork. You know, people have produced art, sold it off as an NFT, but no one's ever put like a full novel as an NFT before. So I get to spearhead that, which is very exciting. So you just download the app, you go to Book Vaults, download the app for free, and then when the book's published next month, you can buy it directly from there, read it on your Kindle or your iPad, same as you would do any other book.
That sounds fantastic. Do you have a website and social media you would like to share?
For myself, or for the book vault, I mean, you just Google it.
No, for you, yeah.
Me, all of my social media, as we discussed just before we officially came on air, neither of us are very particularly technologically sound. So all my social media are extremely simple. It's just my name. So Instagram, it's James Fahy Author. Facebook, it's James Fahy Author. TikTok, it's James Fahy Author. Twitter, James Fahy Author. So if you Google my name, it'll give you all of my socials. And I'm mainly on Instagram, is where I do most of my interfacing with everybody, because it's where I met every reader and writer I've ever known. But I am on every platform. You can't get rid of me.
We don't intend to.
I've refused to do any dancing, though, on TikTok. I will point that out. I refuse to join into that side of things. You don't want to see that.
You know, maybe as a bonus.
Maybe in the next NFT edition, I'll include a short video of me dancing, and then people will be demanding refunds.
Oh yeah, I don't, as bad as I am at technology, I'm even worse at dancing. So trust me, I understand. Thanks for hanging out and chatting with me, James. I had such a great time.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us with Out with Dan. See you soon. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.